So I know you're really, really excited and you want to put the flute together and begin playing the flute immediately. But stop. Wait, don't do it. We need to first think about how we create sound on the flute. It doesn't play itself. It takes air. It takes breath. Just like you, as a living body, are supported by life through the breath, the flute is also supported in its life through the breath. Learning how to utilize the air is a really, really important step in being a fantastic flute player. So we're going to talk just a little bit about that. Before diving in too deeply, I just want you to take a moment to close your eyes and to notice your own natural breath. So what are you noticing? Can you notice the pace of your breath? Its depth? Its duration? Notice which parts of the body move as you inhale and as you exhale. Without trying to control the breath, just notice your natural breath. On your next inhalation, invite the breath to deepen. And just with that cueing, notice what changes in the breath when you invite a deep breath. Without instruction, without labeling, just notice. So the breath works both as a voluntary system and an involuntary system. When we're not thinking about the breath, it's going to function. For example, when we're sleeping. But if we want to invite consciousness around the breath, we certainly can, and that is absolutely what we have to do when we're playing a wind instrument such as the flute. Developing control of breath is the way that we develop control over the quality of our sound and articulation and the way we speak and live through our instrument. So how does the breath mechanism actually work? I don't want to get too heavy into this, but too heavily into this, but I do want to give you to provide some clarification around some terms that you're likely to hear in relationship to the breath. You may hear the term diaphragmatic breathing. And I want to be very clear with you around what the diaphragm is and how it functions as a muscle. The diaphragm is a very large dome-shaped muscle that is just below or at the base of the thoracic cavity. The diaphragm is cool for a lot of reasons. One is that this great big dome separates the thoracic cavity, which houses our respiratory system, from the abdominal cavity, which houses our other internal organs. So we have the respiratory system in the heart, in the thoracic cavity, and we have the stomach and the kidneys and the digestive system in the abdominal cavity. The diaphragm separates those two cavities. The diaphragm functions in one way, basically. When we engage the diaphragm, it draws down toward the abdomen. That's the contraction of the diaphragm. As it draws down, air is then pulled into the lungs. So you may hear terms like breathe into your belly. I'm going to use that terminology myself. What I want you to be clear about is that we're not actually putting air into our belly, but the diaphragm is pressing down on the organs in the abdominal cavity, and as it presses those organs down, they have to go somewhere, so they're going to come out into the belly. That's what we see down there. There isn't actually air down there. When the diaphragm releases, when we release the engagement of the diaphragm, it softens and moves back up into its dome-shaped cavity. The air is moved out typically by the weight of the body tissue in the upper part of the torso. We can also engage muscles in the torso to assist with moving that air out of our body. And as flutists, we're going to learn how to do that. We use our abdominal muscles, our side muscles, our back muscles, the intercostal muscles, these little muscles that are located between the ribs. All of those become important aspects of our breathing mechanism. So the diaphragm is a dome-shaped muscle located at the base of the thoracic cavity that when engaged moves down. When released, it floats back up into the thoracic cavity. I'd like to take a moment now just to work with you on developing what many call a three-part breath. Again, just to provide clarity around the physiology of it, there actually aren't, or there isn't a way to fill the lungs from top to bottom. When you draw air into the lungs, the entire lung is inflating, and when you move air out of the lungs, the entire lung is deflating. But we use this imagery to help us physiologically take a fuller, deeper breath. So I'd like for you to, in your chair, sit comfortably with both feet on the floor. Sit up tall, so you're lengthening the sternum, you're lengthening gently through the crown of the head. Soften the shoulders onto the body. Close the eyes, and again, take just a moment to notice your natural breath, the pace of your natural breath. So on your next inhalation, invite the breath to deepen. And as the breath deepens, allow the belly to expand. As you exhale, draw the belly button in and up toward the spine. Inhale, soften the belly. Exhale, draw the belly button in and up toward the spine. On your next inhalation, soften the belly. Draw the air into the ribs. Feel the expansion of the side ribs and the back of the body and the front of the ribs. Exhale, allow the ribs to fold in and on themselves, and then draw the belly button in and up toward the spine. Inhale, soften the belly. Allow the belly to expand. Draw the air up into the ribs. Exhale, allow the ribs to fold. Draw the belly button in and up toward the spine. On your next inhalation, soften the belly, allow the belly to fill, draw the air into the ribs, and then allow it to rise all the way surrounding the heart, lifting the sternum. And as you exhale, soften the body, allow the ribs to fold, draw the belly button in and up toward the spine. And again, soften the belly as you inhale, the belly floats out, the ribs open, and then the air lifts the heart and the sternum. Exhale, soften, the ribs fold, belly button draws in and up toward the spine. Do this with me, 3 deep breaths. And on your next inhalation, allow the natural breath to return and notice how you feel. So this 3-part breath is something that we can utilize regardless of whether we have a long duration to take in a breath. You may have a lot of time before you have to come in, and you can really indulge and take time to really fill the lungs. What we'll eventually learn how to do is to move the air in and out of the body very, very efficiently and very quickly. But this concept is retained throughout the process of the breath. This is the breath control aspect. So you may have noticed that as you were engaging in this exercise that the breath was smooth, and if so, that's fantastic. You may have noticed that it was a little shaky, or maybe your breath took a little longer than mine, or maybe the duration was even longer. These are just things to notice. They're not judgments. Ideally, we want to work toward a long, slow, controlled breath initially with this exercise. And as we continue to work with the idea of air and breath, we can play with those ratios. But for now, just practice a 3-part breath. It's really, really going to open up your playing in many, many ways. I know you're really excited about getting started on the flute, but before we move to the flute, I want to talk just a little bit about the flute embouchure and its relationship to the breath. The embouchure refers to the musculature of the mouth through which we channel the air or direct the air into the flute. The shape of the embouchure for flutists generally is like saying the word poo, poo. Let me hear you say that. Poo, poo. Notice when you say poo that the lips press together. So in this pressing of the lips together, we're narrowing the opening that the air is going to move through. Notice when you say poo that the bottom lip comes forward, that the air is moving on the inside of the lips, the wet part of the aperture, the opening in the lips. This is what we want with the flute embouchure. Notice that when we say poo, the corners are not pulled back, but they're more forward. They're engaged, but a little more forward. This is really, really important. We want to create a tunnel for the air to move through, very much like moving it through a straw. So if you have access to a straw, I would like to invite you to take a straw now. We're going to form the syllable poo, poo, and we're going to place the straw in the center of the aperture, like this. This is more or less our flute embouchure. What I would like to do is take just a few deep breaths and then exhale through the straw. Okay, so have the straw ready. Place it just inside the aperture. Breathe in. And again, inhale. Notice that I'm aiming my straw down toward the floor and not out in front. This is the direction that we want the air to move. The flute is going to be below the opening in the lips, not in front of it or above it. So we want the straw to also be facing down. This is the direction of the air. This is the shape of the tunnel and the direction of the tunnel that we want to create. So again, we're forming the embouchure as if saying the word poo. We're placing the straw in the aperture. Deep breath in. So you may notice that the duration of the breath is longer when you have the straw than without the straw. This is because we're moving a large portion of air through a little tiny opening. It's not quite like a reed instrument. They have an even smaller opening than that. The flute is very much like the tuba in that we don't have a lot of resistance that we're dealing with in the instrument. We create our own resistance with the aperture and the embouchure. Ideally, we're wanting to really be able to control these muscles in the embouchure. And utilizing a straw and getting a feel for that is one way to begin to develop that musculature. Now what I'd like to do is have you take a deep breath in. We're going to place the straw. We're going to begin blowing through the straw, and then you're going to pull the straw out. But keep the air moving. This is going to be fairly representative of what the embouchure is going to feel like when we add the flute. Okay, so poo-shaped embouchure. Big breath in. Place the straw. Exhale. Remove the straw. Let's do that one more time. So poo-shaped embouchure, big breath in, place the straw, exhale. Excellent. Well done. Before we move to the flute, I want to take this onto our finger. So we're going to take the index finger, place it in the crook of the chin, so right into the crook of the chin, really fit it in there nicely. So you're not up on your bottom lip. We don't want to do anything that's going to hinder the flexibility of that lower lip. We're going to need that flexibility of the lower lip. So place the finger right in the crook of the chin. That's why we were created with chins. It's to rest our flute fingers and our flute head joints on. So same thing. You're going to find your poo-shaped embouchure. Feel as much of that lower lip against the finger as you can. Okay, poo, poo. There's a lot of lower lip on the finger. Poo, poo. Take a big breath in. Exhale through a poo shape. So you may hear an air sound in what I'm creating. That's what we want. That means that the air is going in the right direction, which is against the finger. If you're not getting any sound, if it's like this, that means that your air is going too far across and out. It won't go into the flute and you won't make a sound. You want the air to be directed down onto the finger and ultimately into the flute. So let's try that again. Fingers in the crook of the chin, lots of flesh of the lower lip on the finger, just like saying the word poo. Inhale. And one more time. Inhale. Release the finger and release the effort of that exercise. Great job.